Okay, perfect. Last drink. Cheers. Thanks for doing this.
There
Excited.
we go. Alrighty, awesome. Hello, everybody. I'm Trevor Longino from Crowd Tabers, and today I have a guest, Tamas Holczer, and we're here to talk about You're Funded. Now, what the heck do you do? We'll be about 30, 45 minutes, somewhere in there, talking about a few different things that he and I have been chatting about for a while about what to do after you've been funded and tips and tricks to help you make your next step work. Also, it's worth noting, right, I'm with Crowd Tamers. Tamas, you're with You Work Global. And Tamas and I are working together along with some other people. We're putting together a little joint opportunity together called Raise2Launch. You can see right over Tamas's head the R2L logo. You can see more about it at raise2launch.com. I still don't have, I don't think my name's on the website yet. That's on me. I have the password. I should log in and do it. But that is a little joint effort where we're looking to solve all of the non technology side of a startup. I know tons of founders who are product led who build something and then go, hiring, finances, marketing, sales, all these pieces don't really know how to tackle them. Raise2Launch aims to help them with that. With that said, we're talking about some of the non-technical sides of what happens after you're funded. I think a really good question is just at the top level decision making, right? I have gotten 500K, a million, 5 million, whatever it is. My startup has reached its new funding inflection point. From the HR side, because that's really your expertise, hiring and people and building all that. What do you do next? What's the first thing you think someone should try and tackle?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And hopefully, you do have a head of people like a CTO for technical things. You have a head of HR next to you that probably someone who you worked with. If you're not or don't have any, well, that's kind of like pointing it out right away that you need strategic thinking from now, and you can't just put out fires and say, I need one person for this, I need one person for that, because you have a business continuity. So you need actually hiring intelligence, you need strategy, you need to create talent pool, you need to create a culture, a company culture. So all these things are intervened. So you can't just say I just need one person for this, because that's not going to help you to execute later on. You can maybe out a fire with that, which is the most important thing on your plate. But you really need an HR business partner, someone who you work with part time, is totally fine, and start tackling the bigger problems. And bigger problems, such right away, is a hiring roadmap. Well, if you have a product roadmap, you should have a hiring roadmap. Guess what?
Sure.
The hiring roadmap changes today with the AI coming. So having an HR business partner next to you who understands these AI changes and how this will influence things is important. Because, for example, whoever hired today is not going to be named job a year from today, 2 years from today. So try to create a hiring roadmap with a changing market, where the labor market is changing because the jobs are changing, is, I would say, utmost difficult. And if someone says they have experience in this, that's not true, because that's the first time it's happening, knowing that it's actually happening.
Right.
So there are a lot of good guesses and a lot of good practices to follow, but I think it's that's why you need a strategic conversation ongoingly, almost every month or every quarter, because it's not like we thought it is. We need maybe five developers, but maybe only need three with ChatGPT. Well, we maybe only need two with every other AI tool that is out there plus ChatGPT, and we need like a operate like a process how we're gonna change the two-person we hire owingly, and how their role is gonna change a year out and 2 years out. So these things has to happen just when you're looking at a hiring roadmap. And so that's my first take on this. You have the money, now what? Well, you have to look at your hiring roadmap, and you need someone to work ongoingly to iron this hiring roadmap on a strategic level.
Gotcha. So that raises an interesting question. Can you give a specific example? You kind of alluded to it with hiring headcount will change as AI shows up and reduces the some of the workload that you used to have to do and automates it away. What are you seeing right now where you're like, oh, this job, this career, this whole field, it's going to be very hard to make a prediction for a year from now because of how fast things are moving?
Yeah, it's hard because even when I go to an event, like last Thursday, I was in an event and someone talk about how they use AI in their product development. I was, even though I thought I followed this, I heard something new. So they say before they release the product, they use AI and chatbots to test how a client would behave with the platform. They test how the users will behave with the platform, and how someone could hack the platform. So they have right away probably a thousand or a few hundred chatbots hitting the platform as a client and as a hacker, and they're getting all that feedback, and they're basically have a list of bugs and a list of features that they still need to run out, and that's when they do a release. So is that changes the QA team? I mean, it's just a whole different approach, right?
Yeah,
So they still have QA, but it's a different QA. The QA thinking how to set up the chatbots, because you're not doing the same type of QA work anymore. But of course, you need to keep things organized, so you can't remove the QA as a function. Just the day to day is changing, and that's just because the product head of product was an AI fan, and happened to know what kind of AI tools to use. So that's how quickly this is changing. And 2 3 months from now, there will be a different AI tool, something that may end up doing something we can't even come can even see today, and that's okay. That's why I think the strategic conversation has to take place. So maybe what I'm recommending every founder is you have to have a more frequent management meeting when you look around in your own field and ask the other stakeholders, co-founders, managers about how their field is changing, and recognizing quickly how these two fields can change when it comes to workflow. And there has to be an HR person there who immediately can reflect and say, yes, I can form a role from this information. I can form a job description. I can form a part-time role, because that has to happen right away organically. If you just imagine a job and you tell HR, find someone like this, that's going to be, first of all, hard. Second of all, by the time you have it, it's possible role also changed a little bit. So you need to have this thing together, and that's why I'm kind of reflecting back that if you don't have an head of HR in these table conversations, when you try to organize your whole your whole software development life cycle, your product cycle, your product roadmap, you need this strategically, including the people part.
gotcha. Yeah, in my experience, I imagine yours is probably the same. Seed stage companies don't tend to have head of HR. It tends to be CEO, founding team. A stage companies not infrequently have a recruiter or someone who's at middle level, but they don't tend to hire like a senior people person until the B or even the C round.
That you actually bring up a very good point, and that's coming because the CEO says, "I'm just going to hire myself." Right?
Yep.
It's a very common thing, and the problem right there is that if someone, unless the CEO has an HR recruitment background, then you can do it.
Right.
If you don't, the problem you're going to do, or the challenge, what you need to come over right away, that how do you hire different people than yourself? Because whoever is similar to you is not what you need in an organization, because you don't want to scale of yourself. You want to hire better people for the role that you imagine, and that begins by hiring different kind of people. So my tip to a CEO who try to hire themselves, the candidate you understand the least, who's a completely different thought process, is probably what you need. But because stand and you're afraid and there's no HR to bridge that, you just end up not hiring the person. And you're going to end up hiring the person that you know the most, you're comfortable the most, and you understand the most. And it will become a completely one sided structure instead of an organic 360 that you need in a collaborative way. So that's my tip for CEOs. If sadly, that you don't know what you don't know is very much true here. If you don't have a recruitment or HR background and you don't know how to bridge these cultural parts, then you're just going to end up hiring someone that you feel comfortable with, and that may not be the most effective when it comes to executing on your plan.
Gotcha. So I think hiring drives strategy, and strategy drives hiring. These two walk back and forth together. And likewise, as you're doing, as you've funded, right, on the marketing side, your marketing strategy drives based off of what your previous revenue says has worked, what your investors say works, all these sorts of things. You want to be measuring and looking at things like average customer value and close cycle and who is buying from you. And then the strategy of how you grow your company based off of the money you're earning and the funds you've raised also is going to change based off of what how much customer support do I need, how much QA, to use your example, do I need. Most startups I have worked in, even at A and B size, QA is still very much like a vestigial department. There may be one engineer who does some RPA stuff, but there's not a whole dedicated team for it. Um, Much to the dismay of some of those companies. I recall a hardware startup I worked in where they had ordered whatever, I think 500,000 units of a piece of hardware, got them all, and only then realized the hardware didn't work. Like, oops, right? QA would have helped a lot then. Um, the that idea of okay, so I need to hire different people than me, I think is a very good point. I need to look at how my company is growing and how my investors say it needs to grow moving forward, build a hiring plan out for that. But where do I go to find, particularly, like, I'm a product led founder, I'm a tech led founder, I need to hire the rest of the company. Where do I go to find these people who are not me?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there's no one answer to that, because you can just go and say, it's the same way. Where do I find my clients? There's not going to be one source where you're going to find your clients, right? This recruitment in that sense similar, that you need multiple channels, multiple sources. You got to try which portal gets you good candidates, which partner company should you work right away. And there's all these companies who are offering their services to recruit for you, right? And they bring you contractors and so on. That Yeah, welcome back. I had maybe an internet
Is it
lag, not sure one
is
side.
it me who's
So
out, or is
you're
it
back
Tamas who's
online.
out?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Hmm.
Yes,
I'm
we
not
look
sure
like we
who's
are
there
back
that
online.
hiccuped.
Yes, me neither. But it's good that we had this. This is how it looks
Oh,
like in
see, one of us
broadcast.
has no internet.
But
Hope it's not me.
yeah. So now we do, right? We're back to. Let me know when you can hear me, because I can see you and looks like live
All right.
again.
I will assume I have internet and continue as if I did.
Yes,
I
sounds
appear
good.
to.
Can you hear me?
And I will re-invite Tamas. So anyway, uh,
Looks
the
like that.
question of hiring, the question of growing. Uh, I'm just pinging Tamas to see if he's here with me. Uh, the question of hiring, the question of growing, comes down to finding good processes, finding good ways to recruit, even from people who are not you. There are a couple of tricks that I like to use. I was going to bring up after Tamas spoke, but
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm
So I will.
inviting him back into the chat. See if I can make him return here. Uh,
But
it's just me now. Uh, so, building good processes to find and recruit people who are not you into your company. And one of the ways I know of to do this is to use tools such as Clifton Strengths or the Kobe personality test, and use that as a uh, way to evaluate people, because for different sorts of roles, you have different sorts of personalities. And with different sorts of personalities, you're going to end up wanting to hire people who I'll give an example, right? I'm a founder. Most founders tend to be very kind of idea driven. Hey Tomas, I'm vamping for time, but let me finish my thought before we bring you back onto your topic. Uh,
sounds good. Sorry for the.
I'm
I don't know
very
who has of internet, but
I
But
don't know either. Internet hiccup. It happens
yeah,
sometimes.
happens.
Um, and OneStream, which is the tool I use to do my streaming with, is a pretty good tool. It doesn't seem to like it very well when someone drops the call. It tends to freak out a bit. So, um, one of the ways I like to use a tool like Clifton Strengths or Kobe personality test, these sorts of things, is if I have a role I know I need to hire for that is, for example, very uh, detail oriented, process driven, systematic. None of those things describe me terribly well. Uh, Finding somebody who, on the Clifton Strengths or Kobe A personality test, have those skills, even if me as a recruiter, like normally you want to hire somebody who you like, hey, I get this person, right? We get along well. If I find somebody with good bona fides and who seems to be competent and who has those personality strengths that I lack for a role where it needs it, right? You wouldn't want that necessarily as your creative director, but for your CFO, right? Very systematic, very diligent, very process driven, like somebody who loves to have a checklist and check it off. That's a great CFO. That's a great bookkeeper. That's a great project manager. That's a great head of product. All of these sorts of roles. Uh, and using those tools lets you identify those personality traits and see, even if that person isn't necessarily the perfect simpatico fit for me as a human, do they fill the hole that my company can sees it needs in this sort of role to help me stay on the straight and narrow? That's one of my tactical tricks I like to do. So when I'm hiring somebody and they get to like the final, next to last stage for a job offer, pay the whatever it is, 40 something bucks
Mhm.
per Clifton Strengths test, give it to everybody. They'll tell you a lot about who they are. And then if you are lucky, and I've tended to be fortunate in my recruiting, you have 3 to 5 candidates who all are good enough to do the job. And then you look and see which one fits best for the personality of what the job will be, and then lean towards that one by preference. Like that's worked really well for me. So that was me vamping for time. You were in the middle of a thought, and you said there's much different ways to go. This is hard to answer definitively, and then the internet went. So please
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe just start with the tips right away. So tips are there's no one source to recruit from, and you need to think already in the long run. Think every candidate you talk to could lead you to another candidate. Kind of like every client you talk to, learn from, can get you another lead. If you're doing what is intelligence, that you looking at every candidate by explaining what you're looking for, and try to get candidate referrals and try to build a relationship with that person, because that person may not work for you today, but maybe gonna work for you 2 years from now, a year from now, you don't know. So my first tip right away: treat every interview like a client meeting immediately. Like, take proper notes, not just like, oh, I'm gonna just jump in for an interview to ask 4 questions and then leave. That's that. I'm sorry, but do you do that for a client? You don't, right? Even
Right.
though resources are probably, if not as much as important as your client, maybe it's more important now that you got funded because you're a year away from revenue or 6 months away from revenue, or I don't know how long time that takes, maybe less, but your people will stay with you. You can change clientele, but you can't really change the people. That's not like, okay, I'm just going to let everybody go and rebuild this.
Right.
So it's I start right there, that every hire you do, or you every hire or every person you bring to your organization will contribute something. The big question: how can you bring the most out of that person? How can you keep that person happy, engaged, and how that person will end up creating the right culture that you need. And so, just explaining this back to the practical, treat every interview like a client meeting. Take proper notes, and that's where it begins. Have a platform where you track all this, and have proper notes that a year from today, 2 years from today, you can look back to this person if there is and this is an area where you're always hiring, for example. Look at the word as a global thing. Where are you going to have clients? Where are you going to have maybe other development places? You're probably not going to have one location anymore. So all the locations that you're thinking to have on the map, and usually that often 3 4 locations right away, why don't you have a partner? Why don't you choose a recruitment partner or someone who can give you those local insights about that market? Is that US and Mexico, US, Mexico, and Argentina? Is that US and Europe? Is that what part of Europe? Is that Germany because maybe you have a client there? Or is that East Europe where you get the resources from? So Again, this all goes back to talent intelligence, that you just not saying, I'm going to put out this fire and find an engineer who's going to help me first. Think a little bit of the roadmap. Where my business going to be active? Which countries? And how can I get the specifics about that country, and specific meaning employment law, you know, best practices, the job portals most popular at those countries, the best recruitment company at that country, the the what is going on when it comes to resources and people in that country. So that's how you should approach that. And that's a saying that would require one maybe development company, maybe one recruitment company, and maybe one most active job portal know-how, is the basic know-how of that country. And once you have that, then you're actually going to look at candidates from all those sources. And the next thing what you may not have is an actual interview process. Well, if you don't have an interview process, and it's just that I'm just going to see how it goes, I'm just going to ask a few questions, kind of wing it, that's gonna go really short. Again, you want to show the candidate that you have a process, you have a strategy, you're thinking long term. And if they have a referral, now that they understand what you're looking for as to hire, bring that to you, and maybe even award the person right away, even if the person is not working for you yet. So it's very common in today's marketplace that you end up getting a candidate referral from a candidate, and that is your hire. So award the candidate that you interview first. They will be happy, right? Even though that person is not working for you. Most companies just only avoid employees referring another candidate. Again, candidate referrals is probably a very good source to get people. So, and lastly, if you, and these are the deeper questions, if you try to build some sort of culture already, how do you define that culture? How can you make that come alive? You're looking at maybe people's predictive work behavior. Maybe you're looking at already how to assemble a team based on similar interest. You're basically gonna maybe gonna create a culture where traveling is always okay. Maybe you're gonna create a culture where going to a co-working place is okay. Maybe going to build a culture where you need 4 or 5 satellite offices. So you need to come up with some sort of strategy, and then try to obviously validate that with those expert inputs that you have in each country, right? Because they might tell you your strategy is wrong. So don't be okay. Go back to the drawing board and say, okay, if I want to operate in these countries, how can I form a good mutual strategy? And then you obviously have a lot better interview, a lot better outcome, and a lot better data to later on capture happen with that candidate. And you're not able to build. Otherwise, you're just putting out fires.
Excellent. A lot of what you're talking about, and what I have found interesting about talking and collaborating with you in the past, is this sounds a lot like how I talk about marketing, in that it is in any given arena, you need to figure out, for what I want to execute, what are my costs? What is my potential reach for the audience I want to hit? What's the benefits I can get out of this, right? This is the same as in marketing, right? One of the early things you need to do when you've raised your round is really understand, for what I've done in the past, what's my reach and my cost and my quality. RCQ analysis. This is old school, whatever. I'm a grumpy old man. This is old school, like McKinsey was teaching this back in like '04. So it's definitely not cutting edge tech anymore, but it is still true and useful. And the same idea, right? If I want to hire great copywriters, how many can I hire in the Philippines versus in Nigeria? How good are they in the Philippines versus Nigeria versus, I don't know, Chicago? And what's the cost I will need to pay for the number I can achieve, the quality of them, right? You balance these three out and you find the medium of the three that suits your business needs best. And usually optimizing for any one of those three is going to leave you regretting, because you want to
Exactly.
get the balance of the three, not just say, hey, I want the cheapest writers I can find. Well, honestly, it's ChatGPT. There you go. Or I want, 200 different copywriters. Okay, I've been in that place before where I hired 75 copywriters in Tamil and Telugu and Hindi, and I didn't care if they were any good. But man, there was a tremendous amount of work put into maintaining them, monitoring them, overhead processing, all these things that, a little more work in quality, being able to spend maybe a little more for each individual writer would have paid off in way less work for me as a result.
Mhm. You said it really well, because it's true that you need to look at these business. You can call it business KPIs. Like, is it
Yeah.
important to have a time zone? Is my clients gonna end up needing some sort of support, or the time zone is not that relevant? Okay, then the only question is, how much overlap time do we need to collaborate with each other? And that, if that is small, like engineers are famously small for that, like,
Yeah.
daily stand up, 1 hour, half hour overlap, 2 hours overlap is plenty. Three is probably almost not necessary. That they can totally operate that way. A sales team probably need a few hours to overlap, but the moment you go customer support and all that and so on, they may need different time. And then again, it goes back to, do I need a time zone for my client? Because that's going to set the tone. Okay, I want to serve my clients this time zone because this is where I get my clients, from this time to this time. And that might be actually two continents right away if you're thinking that you have clients in two time zones. So that's going to kind of set up your core hours. And then you basically just hire towards how much overlap you need with that core hours. And that's one another way to go. And yeah, anyway, back to you, because you may have another question related to that. I just want to reflect that it is similar the way you plan the people, the way you plan marketing.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we were talking earlier today, you had a really interesting idea because I asked you, do you hire people full time? Do you hire people contractor? How do you, as the business owner, make that decision? Tell me a bit about your point of view there.
Yeah, it's funny that it doesn't matter what you want as a business owner. The only thing that matters is what the candidate is okay with it and what the candidate wants. Because if your investor is forcing you to hire people on payroll, you're already losing a lot of candidates. If you're trying to be all flexible and contractors only, that might gonna not be the best way to go. So honestly, what I'm trying to say is, there's such thing as people's first or company first. So instead of try to force your company to be the norm and people understand what you want to do, how about you just basically pay attention to people, especially in the beginning when you're small. Nobody's gonna You're not gonna have a pool, like a brand pool that people want to learn from your brand and adopt. You need to go with the people first strategy, meaning that how can you bring the most amount of information, talent, work from that resource. And that's why I said it's actually the candidate will dictate. Is that going to be a contractor, a part time? Is that going to be a contractor full time? Is that person want to preferably come on board 6 months later? So there's no, because obviously your goal is to keep the talent as engaged as possible. So the big question is, from the talent, what is the form of employment that keeps you most excited, most engaged, and most, what you want? And then if the candidate gives you a form of employment that you don't have, well, that right away, right there, you know what you need to do as a business to capture that talent. Good news, if you actually did the planning in advance, and all those countries where you plan to operate have a partner in recruitment, have a partner at development company, then you actually know these kind of things, and you can even say, why don't you have a part-time employment first at my partner who's doing the recruitment for me or doing the product development for me, and then I will hire you later so there is a way to do this contract to hire. Of course, there's a bunch of cloud solutions for that, payroll as a service. But again, imagine how the partnership would be if in that country you have a partner who you may be getting engineers from, or getting companies, candidates from, and you basically go and, hey, here's one candidate. Can you payroll this through your payroll first, and then to mine? So it kind of lines up. That is the same for everybody. That partner company will look at you, well, wow, here's one client who actually really doing this properly. So again, you want to be a good client for your recruitment and hiring partners as well. And if you have a candidate that you try to muscle on your own, it's much better just kind of put it through the same process, and maybe that process is a contract to hire, often a very effective way. But again, the candidate might say, I want to be a freelancer forever, which is totally okay. The next question right away is, how the best can I engage you, and what kind of capacity can you provide to my company, and how can I be sure that this is a good employment relationship, which is not necessarily employment in a sense of payroll employment. So
Okay.
so it's a people first philosophy versus company first philosophy, and try to find out how you can bring the best out of someone.
Gotcha. So somebody puts together a job post. They want to hire pick your any role, whatever. They get a really good candidate in, and the candidate says, "Hey, I've got a full-time gig." Your recommendation is, if you like everything about the candidate except the employment terms that you thought you'd offer them, try and work something out.
Yeah, well, you're thinking that that person has to quit the current job. Is that what you're referring to?
But if they're like, "Hey, you can get me 20 hours a week. You can't get me 40, right?"
Hmm.
And so you were, of course, expecting to hire full time, because usually if you post a job offer, you're expecting to hire full time. Like, are you saying
Right,
reevaluate, or what are you recommending there?
right out of the gate, people first strategy. You should post to able to scale down your job requirements so that the person can do in 20 hours and look for another person in 20 hours. Maybe that would be the best solution. Like, if for anything rigid in employment is not about the people. There's no such thing as putting people in a box and assuming that they're going to be happy with it. So you need to always turn this around and say, if you can only do 20 hours, how can I reorganize my tickets, my to dos at the company, my tasks, so that it becomes possible to do it in 20 hours? Because it is probably possible. I don't think there's any job that cannot be done part time. It's just going to be slower, right?
Right.
So if it's not enough, right now you have nobody, right? So anything more than nobody is fast. So if you start with 20 hours per week or X amount hours per week, and you continue to look, by the way, you can always ask the candidate, do you know anyone like you that you want to work together with? It is very likely a candidate says, yeah, actually, I do know a friend. So how about two of you together and, doing the 40 hours? Yeah, it requires another interview and kind of looking at that and so on and so on. But that's very, so you got to be agile. You have to be agile in your hiring when it comes to the bandwidth, the time requirements, part time, full time, how many. Someone says, I want 3 weeks or 4 weeks of vacation. Does it matter? Oh my God, you put it into your plan. You can take 8 weeks of vacation if that's what you want. Just, know it in advance when to give the work to someone else. So my business is not impacted by your vacation, and I don't have to call you on your vacation. So these things are, that's what I'm saying. We coming from a little bit capitalist thinking of, like, we can replace people anytime we want. We can't. You can't replace the culture again. You can't just. So it is a very expensive thing to staff your team again. So and the moment you actually tell people that you're really listening, and your goal as a CEO to make them happy so they perform well, they're actually not going to have anything out crazy ask. They're not going to ask something that someone was asking me, what's an ideal amount of vacation time? Well, whatever the person wants. Well, if
Yeah.
they need 2 weeks every month to get recharged, that's okay. Then you have a part-time employee. It's totally fine. Then whatever that makes that person productive, instead of saying, no, we can't do that, and you have to come in, you have to report every day. So that's the agile thinking that you need as a CEO is, how can I bring the best out of this person, and being okay with people having different working styles. And ultimately, if you have a good system, you will able to create a living organism like cells. You have different cells in your body, and they are not often connected, but they all work together in a very good way. So that's probably the best answer.
Super interesting. All right. That's about the time we have today. I think it's been a great conversation around hiring and recruiting strategy, as well as some tactics and some specific examples. Um, Tamas, where do we find you online if anybody has any questions they want to ask more about you?
Oh, thanks. Of course, on LinkedIn, T Holczer is my LinkedIn / T Holczer. I actually do pay attention to people who actually reach out to me and put like a small note in the, not just, it's kind of like vague. You just hit connect because you want to connect with someone. 300 characters is perfect. Personalized invite why you want to connect. And I usually accept those connections and happy to come back to any questions and have conversations with people in any possible format, ideally personal or online. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. And of course, I am Trevor. If you're watching this, you're probably already following me. You can find me at linkedin.com/in/Trevor Longino or at crowdtamers.com. Thanks to everybody for watching. Appreciate your time today, Tamas. Take care.
Thank you.